9 months. That's how long the Vikings could keep meat fresh, juicy, and edible without using a single grain of salt, a single drop of smoke, or a single flame of fire. While the rest of the medieval world was struggling to keep food from rotting in days, the Vikings had figured out a method so simple, so brilliant, and so brutal that it kept their warriors alive through the coldest, darkest, deadliest winters on Earth. And the wildest part? Modern food scientists are only now starting to understand how it actually worked. This is the story of the forgotten Viking preservation method. The technique that fed entire armies, kept villages alive, and powered the longest sea voyages in human history. No salt, no smoke, just fat and cold. Let's go back to around 800 AD, Scandinavia, the frozen north. A land where the sun disappears for months, where temperatures drop to -30 degrees, where snow covers everything for half the year. The Vikings didn't live in this world, they survived it, and the biggest enemy they faced wasn't another tribe, it wasn't a kingdom, it wasn't even the sea, it was hunger. Because in a place where nothing grows for 9 months a year, food was life. Run out of food and your entire family dies before spring. Run out of food on a long voyage and your entire crew starves at sea. So the Vikings asked themselves a question that nobody else in Europe had truly solved. How do you keep meat fresh for an entire winter without using salt, which was rare and expensive, or smoke, which required wood they often didn't have? The answer they came up with is one of the most genius food techniques in human history. They called it grafkjöt, which roughly translates to buried meat or grave meat. And yes, the name sounds creepy, but the method was pure brilliance. Here's how it worked. After a successful hunt or slaughter, the Vikings would take large cuts of meat, usually lamb, mutton, beef, or even seal and whale. They would clean the meat thoroughly. Then they would pack it inside a wooden barrel or a clay jar. But before sealing it, they would do something unusual. They would pour molten animal fat over the meat. Not a small amount, enough to cover every single inch of the meat. Tallow from sheep, lard from pigs, blubber from seals. Whatever fat they had, they used. The fat would cool down and harden into a thick, solid, airtight shell around the meat. Then they would seal the barrel and bury it. But here's where the genius really kicks in. They didn't just bury it anywhere. They buried it in specific spots, cold, shaded, dry pits dug into the earth, sometimes near rivers where the ground stayed cool, sometimes inside underground stone chambers built into hillsides, sometimes even in the snow itself. The temperature inside these pits stayed between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius for months, basically a natural refrigerator. The meat, sealed in fat, locked inside a barrel, buried under cold earth, was now protected from the 3 biggest enemies of food: air, bacteria, and heat. And the science behind this was incredible. The fat created a complete seal. No oxygen could touch the meat. No bacteria could grow without oxygen. The cold earth slowed down all chemical reactions inside the meat. And the fat itself contained natural preservative properties that stopped the growth of harmful microbes. So while the rest of Europe was watching their meat rot in 3 days, the Vikings could dig up a barrel 9 months later and pull out meat that was still soft, still flavourful, and still safe to eat. And here's the part nobody talks about. The taste actually improved. The fat slowly soaked into the meat over the months, making it richer, deeper, and more flavourful. Some Viking sagas describe winter meat as being better than fresh. Modern food scientists who have recreated this method confirm it. The meat goes through a slow aging process, similar to how dry-aged steak works today. The flavour becomes intense, the texture becomes tender, the fat melts into every fibre. It was, quite literally, gourmet food made by accident, by people who just wanted to survive winter. But the Vikings didn't stop there. They had multiple versions of this method, each one designed for different situations. For long sea voyages, they used something called surmatur, sour food. They would take meat or fish and submerge it in fermented whey, a leftover liquid from cheese making. The whey was acidic, which killed bacteria, but it also kept the meat soft and edible for months. Viking longships sailing across the North Atlantic carried barrels of surmatur as their main food supply. And here's the wild part. Some of these voyages lasted 6, 7, even 8 months, from Norway to Iceland to Greenland to North America. And the Vikings did it all eating fermented meat that would make most modern stomachs run for the hills.
Then there was harkal, fermented shark.
Yes, actual shark meat buried in gravel and left to rot in a controlled way for months. The fermentation removed the natural toxins from the shark and turned the flesh into a long-lasting food. To this day, harkal is still eaten in Iceland, and to this day it's still considered one of the strongest smelling foods on Earth. But in Viking times, it was a lifeline. A single shark could feed a family for months. And here's where the story gets really interesting. The Viking preservation method didn't just keep them alive, it changed history. Because the Vikings could store and transport food for months without spoilage, they could go on voyages no other culture could. They sailed to Iceland in 874 AD. They reached Greenland in 985 AD. They landed in North America around 1000 AD, 500 years before Columbus. 500 years. Let that sink in. While the rest of Europe was scared to sail beyond their own coast, the Vikings were eating buried meat from a barrel and stepping foot in Newfoundland. Their food technology gave them the world. Even on land, this method gave the Vikings a massive advantage. While entire European villages would starve during long winters, Viking settlements always had food. Buried under their homes, hidden in their cellars, stored in stone chambers. A Viking warrior could fight in the middle of February with the strength of a man who had eaten properly all winter, while his enemies were weak from hunger. That's not a small advantage, that's a war-winning advantage. Some historians believe the Viking expansion across Europe wasn't just because of their warriors or their longships, it was because of their food. The men were stronger, the voyages were longer, the armies were better fed, all thanks to fat and cold. And here's something almost nobody knows. Modern archaeologists have actually found preserved Viking food. In 2015, researchers in Norway dug up a 1,200-year-old wooden barrel buried in a Viking farm. Inside, they found traces of preserved meat, animal fat, and herbs. The chemical analysis confirmed that the food had been stored exactly as the sagas described. Buried, sealed in fat, kept cold. The Vikings weren't just legends, their food technology was real, and it worked. But like every great civilization, the Vikings eventually faded. By 1100 AD, Christianity spread across Scandinavia. Trade routes opened up, salt became cheaper. Smoking and salting became the dominant preservation methods across Europe. The old Viking ways were slowly forgotten. The buried barrels stopped being made, the fermented foods became rare. The knowledge of how to keep meat alive for 9 months without salt or smoke was lost. Almost. Today, in tiny villages in Iceland, parts of Norway and the Faroe Islands, this ancient Viking method is making a quiet comeback. Chefs are rediscovering it, food scientists are studying it, modern survivalists are using it. Because, in the end, the Vikings didn't just invent a way to preserve meat, they invented a way to preserve life itself. Through the darkest winters, across the coldest seas, into the unknown corners of the world. Fat and cold, that's all it took. And yet, that's how a tribe of farmers and warriors from the frozen north fed armies, sailed oceans, and reached America 500 years before anyone else. If this story amazed you, hit that subscribe button and join the Alternate Past family for more forgotten survival secrets like this.
And tell me in the comments, could you eat meat that was buried underground for 9 months? Yes or no?